everyone. Thank you so much for joining us today. My name is Amanda, and I am the campaign and veterinary manager at Barker Beds. Barker Beds is proud to make orthopedic dog beds manufactured right here in the USA. We are the only clinically proven dog bed that has now a field study done. So I am super excited to be joined by Dr. Sarah today, who had a big impact on this study, and we'll be going through some questions that help understand why better sleep is so important for dogs and the impact this could have on veterinary care in the future. So without further ado, Dr. Sarah, I'll turn it over to you. If you could just introduce yourself and kind of how you got involved in this study.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for having me here today, Amanda. This has been such a cool study, and we've learned so much about sleep in dogs and the quality of their bedding. So my background is in biomedical engineering, and I've been doing clinical studies in the veterinary space for almost 20 years now, which feels like much longer than it should. So I've absolutely loved finding ways to improve health and wellness for our dogs and cats at home and improving their preventive care as well. That's been a big part of my career in the veterinary space.
Awesome. Cool. Yeah. And how did you get involved with Link, who was our partner for this Better Sleep study?
So Link has some incredible technology, really harnessing the power of AI and advances in wearable devices beyond when we think about tracking location and tracking activity to allow us to gather data in the real world dog environment. That's a big step from what we can do in the laboratory. And when the opportunity came through the partnership with Barker to work directly on a study, I was thrilled to join the team.
Awesome. Well, we're glad to have you. So just diving into some questions that, why did we do this and why was this important? So the first question that I had for you today is just in general. So the Better Sleep study focused on why this matters for dogs. Why does sleep matter and why is this important? So why is sleep important for dogs' health and well-being?
Absolutely. So we like to say that dogs are not small people. In this case, it's not that far off. Think about when we've had a rough night's sleep. It's hard to focus. Our brains haven't gotten the rest that they need. Our joints, all of our bodily systems can be really thrown off. And dogs also have several specific conditions which demonstrate as one of their clinical signs or symptoms poor sleep. So when we think about joint pain, we have dogs that can't settle, that wake up in the middle of the night because they're achy or painful. They're moving around, and not only are they not getting great rest, they're waking up their owners as well. And so those pet parents have disturbed rest, and it can really add a challenge to the value of the human-animal bond. And that is such a critical part of having our pets in our lives, that if our pet has a better quality of life, we also have a better quality of life. There are some other really specific conditions. We've already talked a little bit about joints. So our dogs, as they age, have many of the same chronic conditions that we see in people. These can lead to disturbed rest, osteoarthritis, other joint disease, kidney issues, heart issues, and our brachiocephalic dogs, those are those dogs with our short squished noses, they have a hard time breathing anyway. So the more comfortable rest they can get at night, we can ameliorate some of those challenges that those pups have.
Absolutely. And with dogs sleeping anywhere from 18 to 22 hours a day, they need something that is providing not only physical comfort, but also just a rejuvenating space for them.
Absolutely. And for this study in particular, in addition to us being able to truly demonstrate, this was amazing. It was so amazing to me, Amanda, that we were able to demonstrate this in all of these crazy home environments that we had across the country. We were also able to use this technology to start looking at how dogs sleep. Right. How much do they have deep rest? How much are they restless? When we see our dogs dreaming, running after whatever it is they're running after, we think that's a good thing for them. And so we know that that's part of the normal rest cycle for dogs, but that having that deep rest and being able to establish some of those baselines, that's really novel information for our industry.
Absolutely. So I know we talked a little bit about, why sleep is so important for dogs, but that kind of leads me into my next question of what are some of the common issues dogs face with sleep? So I know you kind of went into specific dog types, but why does this matter for dogs? What are some issues that is actually helping alleviate with better sleep?
Oh, that's such a great question. So when we look at the segmentation of sleep, I know we've talked about deep rest. Deep rest is excellent. We want to aim for that. When we look at types of sleep disruption, there's how many times does the dog wake up after they've fallen asleep? How restless are they during sleep hours? And I don't mean dreaming restless. I mean, I can't get comfortable restless. How active are they during these times? Are they circling? Are they pacing? Are they seeking out different surfaces to lay on? And then there are other disruptions that are a little bit more, call it normal. If there's a thunderstorm in the middle of the night, if there's an anxiety event, if someone rings your doorbell unexpectedly while they're asleep, clearly we have a lot of awakenings then. But during a normal quiet evening, dogs do tend to match our sleep patterns. And so we don't want to see them getting up, pacing, changing rooms, or even circling in their bed. And so when we go back to how did this system allow us to get these insights, we didn't have cameras on the dogs like you might in a clinical study setting, is we were taking 30 different measurements every second for each of these dogs overnight. And that allowed us to differentiate between different types of restlessness and categorize those, ultimately putting all of that data into an algorithm, which gave us a sleep quality and sleep efficiency score.
Awesome. Yeah, and there was a lot of data that was pulled from this. So
yeah,
super cool to see how one device was able to pull this much information for those dogs. All right, so jumping into my next question, I know we just focused a lot on data points specifically, but now I'm interested to hear how poor sleep affects a dog's behavior and physical health. And I know there's a lot of studies that's already been done in humans. For example, if all of us are sleeping in a hotel bed, we know that the quality of sleep that we have is not the same as our own bed at home. So can you just tell me why, poor sleep does affect a dog's behavior and physical health, and then also how we can relate to this as humans?
Yeah, absolutely. So when we think about, again, you've already said it, but this poor sleep nights, we wake up, we're groggy, we have less energy, we have less focus. We see a lot of those same behaviors in dogs. So when we think about our dog's energy in the morning, are they up? Are they ready to go? Are they wagging their tail? Are they demonstrating those behaviors of a happy, excited, energetic dog? Are they ready to play? Or are they showing hesitancy in the morning? Do we see some lameness? Do we see limping when they first get up? After a more comfortable night's rest and more deep sleep and higher quality sleep, we should see a decrease in most of those behaviors that our really attentive pet parents observe. And our pet parents know their pets the best, so they can see things and pick up on that, maybe the dog is a little grumpier with the puppy in the household, or doesn't want to be pet by other members of the family because they're achy and uncomfortable.
True.
As dogs get older, the other thing we watch out for is called canine cognitive disorders. And so much like some of our humans, you start to get a little bit of, broadly, you'd think of it as sort of canine dementia. These are not the same thing, so that's a bit of a misnomer. We do need to be, careful not to say they are the same condition. But dogs will get confused as to where they're at. They will get lost in their homes. They may not recognize all of the humans that they recognized before. And really what we want to do is holistically look at the long-term wellness of our pets. Great nutrition, great sleep, lots of activity, a healthy weight, mental games and enrichment. All of those things will help keep our dogs healthier for longer. Sleep is a critical part of that. It allows the whole body to heal and reset every night.
Absolutely. And that's perfect tie-in to our actual Better Sleep study. So we kind of focused on why sleep matters, but why did we do this study, right? So what was the Better Sleep study? What were key goals that this study aimed to answer?
Well, I think we started from this amazing foundation that you had established with the University of Pennsylvania clinical study. So in that study, we had our canine participants come into the lab, use the Barker bed, and we assessed sleep and their pain indices. And those are very, very well defined in the literature. With this study, we really wanted to see what happened when the dogs were utilizing the Barker beds in their own homes. And in order to do that, we used what's called a crossover design. So we had two different groups of dogs, one of whom already slept on Barker beds, the other of whom had not yet experienced the Barker bed. And that way, each dog is its own control. We're able to measure the difference in all of these different sleep markers, whether the dogs are on a Barker bed or not on a Barker bed. In addition to that, because change can be hard for all of us and hard for our canine companions, we looked at what happened when they changed beds. And by having each group start on one of these categories and then flip-flop for us, we could see not only the impact of the quality of the bedding and the engineering of the bedding, but also the impact of change, and see if our materials, I want to say in a way, overcame that. So we were able to segment this out in several different ways. And we used that University of Pennsylvania study as a bit of a footprint so that we did have a controlled clinical data set to compare against as well.
Exactly. And we followed a lot of the same protocols in the sense of we had, dogs that were 3 years or older, dogs that were X weight and older. So we really tried to mirror it as much as we could in the home setting. And we had many excited dogs that were excited to get a Barker bed. And then we had some dogs that had to give up their Barker beds for a week and the world was ending. So if you could just kind of go through in more detail, how exactly was the study conducted and why did we choose to do it in this way?
Absolutely. So one of the things that we wanted to level set for all of our participants was the impact of having the Link device. So we didn't want the change for wearing that device to be something that affected our data. So we had a baselining week where all of our dogs wore their device, and then our technical and development team were able to put the new firmware into place that would specifically measure in detail their overnight hours. So it gave both our people and our pets a week to get the technology up and running smoothly. From there, each group spent 2 weeks sleeping on whatever their existing bed was, whether it was a Barker bed or whether it was their own comfy original orthopedic beds, because that was one of our selection criteria. We wanted to make sure these were, at least on the face of it, as much apples to apples as possible. 2 weeks on those beds, we measured every night. We also had our pet parents fill out a survey the next day, looking at how the dogs felt in the morning, what were their energy levels, did they have any overnight disturbances, so we could correlate that in-home experience to the data we were gathering on the device. After 2 weeks, we switched them. Our dogs that had been sleeping on Barker beds were switched over to a different orthopedic bed that was a similar size, and our dogs that had started on their menagerie of original beds were switched to a Barker bed of the same size. We then measured all of the same metrics for the next 2 weeks. And at the end of that 2 weeks came the big question. The dogs had both beds out for a whole week, and they got to choose what bed they were sleeping on. That goes back to comfort. It goes back to familiar sense. And we were really curious as to, regardless of what our data said, how our dogs would choose. Then everyone got a treat at the end of our 6-week study.
So jumping into why this matters. So we have all these amazing data points. We have, this whole in-home field study now. Now we have further proof that our clinical study is backed up. So I really want to talk about why this matters. So how can the study results that we found, how can this help future dog owners? Why does this matter? And why is this study important for them?
I'd love to talk about why this matters to our pet parents and to our veterinarians, because it is a healthcare team to take care of our dogs. And as they live longer, this is amazing for us. We get our best friends for longer. And because they're living longer, we do tend to see more chronic diseases. So the answer to your question really goes into two places. As much as we can do in the veterinary clinic, home care is critical to following those recommendations and to really maximizing and optimizing the veterinary care that our pets get. Better sleep is going to be a key factor, and more comfortable sleep is going to be a key factor for the longevity and quality of life of these dogs. Now, we have not done a longitudinal study, you and I, but we might. And so Do great beds help our dogs live longer? We don't know the answer to that question. We do know, based on this study, that they are more comfortable, that they have a great next day when they've had a Barker bed night of sleep. I was absolutely thrilled to see how clear these data were. That's very, very hard to do in a home environment. And so I think it really helps both our pet parents and our practitioners see that sleep is an investment in preventive care, just like so many of the other things we talk about to keep our little friends happy and healthy. Well, in this case, they were big friends.
Yeah, some of them are big friends.
Yes.
And just to emphasize that, we've had owners tell us for years now, like, my dog is a completely different dog after sleeping on this bed. I mean, a lot of that has to do with the joint issues specifically, but like we're focusing on now, not only are their bodies being rejuvenated, their whole world is being rejuvenated because of the sleep quality that they're getting on this bed. So on that same note, what impacts could this study have on dog care and future products, not only just, for pet parents, but in the veterinary industry?
I think it helps this investment it's an investment in preventive care for our pets. It helps really establish sleep quality and bedding quality as part of multimodal holistic care for our pets. We know that pet parents are looking for solutions earlier, which is great, right? It's about establishing health before we have a real chronic issue, before we need true pain management. And maybe our pups will get there. But if we can use a mix of scientifically proven supplements, great bedding, appropriate exercise, we've talked about that already, this aids in weight management. It aids in our dogs being able to play the next day. And so it's part of that whole health approach from the time that we have still relatively young dogs. In this study, as you said, they were 3 and older, up until they get to be 8, 10, 14.
Yeah.
And for our giant breeds who don't have typically long lifespans, we're seeing that shift as well as our smaller breeds. So how do we keep them active and healthy and living their doggiest best life for as long as possible? So it's part of that whole conversation and thinking of wellness as a day-to-day but not difficult activity that we have with our pets.
Yeah, and that's something we try to emphasize too. Don't let it get to the point of where your dog is, limping, visually in pain. This is something that up front you can invest in their health early for joint care, but now also for just better quality of life. So we are so thankful for this partnership that we have with Link, and we are so thrilled with the results that this study, the outcomes of this study. We're so glad to have you on our advisor board for this study. So thank you for joining us today for this conversation. Thank you for your insights and your support. To all of our viewers out there, we do have more information. If you're interested in learning more about our study, you can go to this link here, barkerbeds.com/pages/better-sleep. That'll give you more information and any other stuff that you want to learn about our study. And then, of course, also, you can find us at barkerbeds.com. Be sure to check out our partner in this study, LinkMyPet, as well. And I'll just turn it over to Dr. Sarah if you have any final thoughts before we wrap up today.
Well, once again, thanks for having me. I love the opportunity to really prove the things that we know are true. And I love the opportunity to have all of our pets and our pet parents living their best lives together. So thank you.
Absolutely. Well, thank you, everyone. And for more information, be sure to check out our landing page. Bye.
Bye.